Hey folks, it's Rob and welcome back. I believe this is the third part of my read through on the Dungeon Master's Rulebook from the Red Box Beckme. That is the basic rule set from 1983, and we've been reading through, and we're going to continue onwards with the next section, which I believe is procedures and rules. Yes. Now, before we begin, something is this is basically meant to be a guide and advice for a new DM, right? So even though it's procedures and rules and probably a bit dry, in another sense, it's actually very important. And um, another thing is, like, as this is meant to be kind of a reference for when you're starting out, again, we have an index on the back of this book, and this list page numbers under a D or a P. Now, D stands for the Dungeon Master's Rulebook, and P stands for the Player's Manual, as it says up here. And for example, if you want to look up rules on clues, D14, right? Right here. So, make use of the resources available to you. But obviously, you're much more likely to be getting into Beckme with either a PDF of this set, which is great, not quite the same as the as actually having one in hand, but is great. I do own a copy. Or you're going to be getting into basically the compiled encyclopedia, right? Uh, and I have a copy of that on my bookshelf as well. But the compendium is quite good. Maybe not so great for learning the game with, is my opinion. Enough about my opinions, though. Let's go and get on with reading here, because I'd like to get through the entire section. I don't know if we will. It's a lot of text. There's more than a few pages in this section, so we're going to have to just get started. This section explains what you, the Dungeon Master, should do in several common game situations. The situations are listed in alphabetical order for easy reference. You should refer to these descriptions whenever the situations arise until you are familiar with the details of each. The following situations covered are alignment changes, arguments, blindness, charm person spells, clues, complaints, creating characters, deities, demi-humans, special abilities, dice, doors, equipment not listed, evasion and pursuit, higher level spells, hit points, low rolls, languages, listening, magic user spells, mapping, morale, multiple characters, new rules and items, questions, retainers, sleep spells, thief abilities, timekeeping, transferring characters, and turning undead. These are all fairly salient things to talk about, I believe. Alignment changes. So, alignment is the way a player wants to play a character, either lawful, neutral, or chaotic. Again, this version only has the three broad alignments. And really, in interpretation, lawful's meant to be the good guys, chaotic's meant to be the bad guys, and neutral is more along the lines of, well, I mean, there are some neutral entities out there and neutral people, but neutral is also like the unthinking animal, just in the broad perspective. To bring you up to speed, we haven't talked about that since the player's manual. As it says here, sometimes a player forgets or ignores the alignment of his character and plays the character incorrectly. I will point out, it says there, plays the character, plays plays the adventurer incorrectly. Now, it's saying that you've opted to play a lawful character, and yet you have, like, slaughtered the village of, the bunnies people. Why did you do that, right? That is incorrect play. Little judgy, but at the same time not incorrect. If you opted for an alignment, why did you opt for that alignment if that's not how you wanted to play? So, what if they are playing differently, right? Perhaps they've been handed a character that has an alignment that they don't agree with. I suppose that could happen, right? The game is not going to be happy about it, but we'll get into it. You should talk privately with the other player about the problem and encourage the proper play of alignment. Never threaten or tease a player during a game. Deal with the problem in private. This is an old school kind of boomery thought, but it goes back before the boomers. The boomers learned this from the greatest in the silence, and that is praise publicly and criticize privately. You're going to privately correct somebody. You won't criticize them publicly in front of other people. You don't shame people in front of other people about these kind of things. You go ahead and you have them go into your office, and then they get called out on the rug, on the carpet. And it's not necessarily a bad way of handling things, but sometimes things need immediate attention. I will say from my personal Gen X perspective. Um, if the problem continues after you have warned the player more than once, you may tell the player to change the alignment of the character to the different alignment actually being played. A penalty may be applied at this time, such as the loss of one level of experience, a valued item, etc. If you penalize alignment changes, you should also reward good alignment play, for example, by increasing experience awarded, treasures for changing monsters to make them easier to defeat. So I think I misread that. If you penalize alignment changes, you should also reward good alignment play, for example, by increasing experience awarded, treasures, there should be a comma here, or changing monsters to make them easier to defeat. Be sure you are playing the alignments of monsters correctly. The players may respond to unfairness by refusing to play in your game. If a change of alignment occurs due to the effects of a magic item such as Helm of Alignment changing or a curse, no penalty should be applied. Take the player aside and explain the situation. A good player will cooperate, playing the new alignment well, resulting in more fun for all. The original alignment should return after a period of time or after the curse helm has been removed, for example. And I think that's very salient and important. But also, yes, a good play should be rewarded, right? And not by I mean like being good guys. I mean playing the game well. And you should award XP for playing a game well. Arguments. If an argument, and just one small paragraph, if an argument starts during a game, stop the game for a moment, listen to both sides, and make a decision. Then continue the game as soon as possible. Do not allow an argument to continue for long. Explain that everyone is trying to have fun and that the argument can be settled after the game if necessary. Basically, you as a dungeon master, part of your job is to ensure that the game continues moving ahead and that decisions are made, right? You will make a ruling. Possibly you'll consult with the players at your table. Maybe you're developing a house rule this way, but you will make a decision at the table if it's about a game thing that there's a dispute between the players. And you should be consistent in your rulings. If you decide that something was wrong later, you will have to explain yourself. And because you don't have to, but I think that's the right thing to do, to explain yourself to the players that, this was wrong, and this is how we're going to do this going forward, right? Explain to them that, when you decided that ruling was, I don't know. Let's say there's a dispute between what a certain, you've decided that it was someone made the argument that they should make a dexterity check to be able to trigger a trap without setting it off, without getting hurt in the setting off the trap. Okay. And you decided that was against their dexterity. And that's fine, but then later on you decide, you know what, that's really unbalancing. It's only going to be thieves who can do that kind of thing. Fine. It's your world, your play game with everybody else. Just make sure that you're explaining what your thoughts are and what you intend to do if you change your mind after making a ruling. And if a disagreement can't be settled at the table, or if it's like a personal dispute between players, Yeah, maybe they can set it aside for later, maybe they can't. If they can't, maybe the session needs to end and they need to go hash their thing out. Obviously, it's a game. Everyone's there to have fun. If player A has ganked player B and they are taking it very personally, you know, maybe that wasn't fun for anybody. And that maybe needs to just kind of be settled outside of the game, right? Charm person spells. Whenever a magic user or elf casts a charm person spell, the player will ask you for the effect. This spell will only affect certain creatures. The beginning player will try it on many different monsters and learn its effects by trial and error. Generally, the creatures affected by a charms person spell are those which are normal human, demi-human, or human-like creatures, which have some sort of society. You may decide the exact creatures affected, or you may use the list below. Once a victim fails the saving throw against the charm, the creature will remain charmed for at least 24 hours, and often longer. The victim may make a new saving throw to break the charm after a given duration. This duration is determined by the victim's intelligence. So, high intelligence people, because functionally these are people, although sometimes they are monsters, but these are intelligent people who can be communicated with. High intelligence, 1 day. So, even Elminster the Wizard, of great fame from a different D&D universe, could conceivably be charmed for a day if he failed his saving throw. He's not going to fail his saving throw. He's a massive uber and self-insert NPC. But, theoretically there's a chance, right? They could always roll a 1 on their saving throw. Average intelligence, 1 week. So you charmed the tavern keeper. He's letting you just stay in that room for no cost because he's your best buddy. Sure. 1 week. He gets to make it a saving throw. He might fail it at that point as well. But, it'll be a week. Low intelligence, 1 month. So you charmed that solo goblin you encountered in the dungeon, and he's been your best pal, tagging along with you for weeks now. Because it's going to be a month before he makes his save. Assuming he can, assuming he will save. Example, a hobgoblin, average, remains charmed for at least 1 week. At the end of that week, you roll another saving throw. If successful, the charm is broken. Otherwise, the hobgoblin remains charmed for another week. If you wish to make your own list, the creatures which should not be affected by the spell are A, animals, B, undead, even intelligent undead, C, any creatures with 6 or more hit dice, which generally means kind of like your larger giants. D, fantastic creatures such as gargoyle, medusa, thule. I'm not sure if it's thule or thal. It's a particular undead to this edition of the game in this setting. I always called it thule, but it could be thal. I don't know. It's ghoul, so I would think thule. But it could be thal. The human-like creatures in this set which are subject to charm person are high intelligence, pixies, sprites. Average intelligence, gnomes, goblins, hobgoblins, kobolds, troglodytes. Low intelligence, bugbear, gnoll, lizard man, Neanderthal, ogre, orc. I'm surprised troglodyte's an average, actually, but, any particular creature might be of high, medium, or low intelligence, and so if there's a variance, it's up to you. You're the dungeon master. I would say that the goblin shaman is probably way more smart than the average goblin, and there will be dumb ones in there too, right? Humans, including bandits, berserkers, and normal humans, these are all listed actually in the monster section, and demi-humans, dwarves, elves, and halflings, may have low, average, or high intelligence. If the exact score has not been determined, you may select or roll for an intelligence score. Elves always have average intelligence or better, and magic users normally have high intelligence. This is kind of what I was talking about with the goblin there. A score of 3 to 8 is low, 9 to 12 is average, and 3 to 18 is high. Some lycanthropes can be charmed when in human form, but this is nearly useless. Only werewolves and wereboars can be charmed, and the charm will automatically be broken when the creature assumes animal form. So, yeah, werewolves, wereboars. I would have thought wererats would have been suitable. Because wererats tend to spend a lot of time being human beings. But, I don't know. Note, some other creatures given in the expert and companion sets may also be charmed. They are listed in each set. So obviously monsters will be determined whether or not you can charm them. But in the end, up to you as the dungeon master practically. But you can see that the intention here is that this is meant for creatures that are intelligent and can be communicated with, not for like snakes or spiders. Because they're just too. Somehow they have to be humanoid, right? Um, there aren't any not humanoid shaped items here. Like if a spider was really intelligent, apparently it wouldn't be charmable this way. There is Charm Monster as a spell later on, and there are Charm Animal spells out there, and those have their own particular limitations, I would imagine. Clues. Beginning players often need help in learning to play. When running a game for beginners, the DM should encourage them by saying such things as, "Do you want to search for secret doors?" or other suggestions. This should not be continued once the players have experience with the game, but such clues can be very helpful to beginners. You may wish to allow some automatic success situations to encourage the players. Those who never find secret doors will soon stop looking for them. When players gain experience with the game, they may wish to start asking questions like, "Do we find any traces of passing creatures?" Or, "We don't know which way to go from here. Are there any are there are clues?" I think we meant, "Are there any clues?" Again, early edition. You may offer descriptive information that players will have to determine what it means. For example, some footprints lead off to the left, but you're not sure what made them. Such clues may help to steer the party in the right direction within a dungeon. You may insert clues as part of the room descriptions. Clues should be given when the party is approaching a deadly area, especially on the first or second level of a dungeon. Clues such as awful smells or bones of earlier victims. Extreme danger with no warning is not very fair, and I will agree with that. There's usually evidence of the, deadly creature or monster nearby. And possibly the birds have stopped tweeting, if on the surface, or like suddenly the wood is silent as they approach the glade, right? Or there may be, just like you encounter, if what is an already foul smelling place, an utter reeking, fetid smell of death, right? Higher level characters are more accustomed to great dangers, and deeper dungeon levels may indeed contain sudden death situations. I will say sudden death isn't necessarily fun for players, but sometimes risk does lead to reward. Your game. Vague or misleading clues may be provided by treasure maps found or purchased, or by sleight of hand, or by slight hard to find indications in the dungeon areas. In general, when the players become more experienced, the clues may become fewer and more subtle, which is fair. Also, you're gonna generally kind of drive plot this way. You're gonna there's investigative kind of adventures, and in a dungeon, mostly this is fairly straightforward play. This kind of level 1 through 3 dungeoneering kind of approach. Later on in expert, you're going to be on the surface of the world and moving around in nature, and also in caves and in dungeons and doing things underground and on the surface and all over the place. And you're going to be getting around, right? And might have be on the trail of Bargle, for example, right? Maybe there's clues. Maybe there's a place he was at for a period of time, right? Um, my recent campaign, I fitted out part of, I had this like temple complex, and I fitted out part of it as a place where Bargle had been staying. He had cleaned up part of the temple complex, this set of rooms, and that's where he had stuff. He had a bed, he had some supplies, he had some notes and stuff he left there for when he was there doing research in this complex. They in that contain clues about the complex itself, should the players find it. If they never entered the room, what am I going to do? Well, maybe I'll adapt my clues in other ways. Maybe there'll be other hints. It's still up to your players to draw the conclusions and make and put it all together. But if they're new players, maybe sometimes you will say, roll your intelligence. And they roll. And you'll say, like, something seems suspicious about the bottom of this chest. And, that might be a blatant clue, but that's sometimes what you need to do. Complaints. If a player complains about the way you are handling something in the game, try to listen to the objection. Be reasonable. If the problem can be fixed by changing a procedure, try to work out a reasonable compromise. For example, if a player says, "You keep killing characters with poison," you might try using the optional damage system for poison on page 24. Be careful not to change rules that could overbalance the game in favor of the characters. The game system is carefully balanced to provide fun for all while challenging the characters. Some complaints may be caused by greed. It should not be too easy to get treasure or experience. Those things should be earned slowly using the guidelines given. Beware of the giveaway game. Your players may quickly become bored with easy riches, and their characters will easily overpower most monsters. If you're not what we used to call Monty Hall, Monty Hall was the host of a game show, and you give stuff away, right? If you are not sure how to handle a situation, just tell the players. Everyone has to learn, and learning a game like this can be a slow process. Your players will understand if you explain that you made a mistake. When you admit your mistakes and try to correct them, you and your players will have a better game in the long run. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Creating characters. When a newly created character has all low scores, the player should discard it, unless you, the DM, say it should be kept. You should allow beginning players to use characters they like. It's hard to have fun playing when you are forced to use a poor character with no score above 9 or 2 scores below 6. If the character is reasonable, then the player should keep the character. If a player wants a certain class of character but rolls another type, you may allow a switch. Just switch the scores of the prime requisite for the desired class with the prime requisite of the rolled class. For example, a fighter is rolled with a 17 strength and 9 intelligence, but the player wants to have a magic user. Just put the 9 in the strength and the 17 in intelligence. Switching more than once should not be allowed, and players should not be allowed to decide. Only the DM may switch ability scores. That's fairly generous, and does soften the impact of the straight 3d6 approach of old school Dungeons and Dragons. Again, I remember saying that we definitely house ruled character generation quite a lot when I was playing as young in my teens and preteens, and honestly, we generally liked in my group in the 20th century. We'll put it that way. As 46, and you assign scores. That meant 46, you roll 4 d6s and you lose the lowest one. And you can assign the scores as you want. You're not swapping points, though. You're not moving points around on the scores. You're just going to assign the scores as you see fit. And that way, generally, you can play whatever the heck you want. Because you will have something probably like terrible. Your likelihood of any 2 6s very low, and scores below 9, all scores below 9 also pretty low. So, but that's me and my old group. This my current campaign was a straight 3d6 roll just out of the game book here because we're playing the rules as written by and large. Deities. You may choose to add flavor to your games by adding mythological deities. The characters would be followers of such beings, and a cleric could serve a specific deity. However, all such activities are assumed and should not influence play or change the rules in any way. No deity would react to the actions of any individual character, nor offer any special help. The deities of the game characters may be similar to the mythological gods and goddesses of days long past. The ancient Greeks, for example, worshipped many gods, Zeus, Apollo, Poseidon, and so forth. According to legend, these gods would grant favors to their worshippers, and that is one way to explain the magic spells a character can cast in the game. The DM should be careful not to needlessly offend players, and current beliefs should be avoided. I will say, by the base setting material here, and this has not yet been developed, the Mystara setting in 1983, the Mystara setting has no gods. Not directly, anyway. That's the I in Beckme, immortals. And the immortals run Mystara and keep the gods specifically out. And behind the immortals are the old ones, and I guess in a way that's the gods, but they're also very hands-off, barring just the enforcement of the immortals' power structure, which is a whole big thing, and I've already made a big tangent. Sorry. Demi-humans. All the demi-human classes have special abilities. When the player wants the character to use one of those abilities, you will be asked for the result. Whenever the character is searching for something, the player must describe the exact area being searched. Each search takes about 1 turn. That's about 10 minutes. If a player says, my character is looking for, whatever, and names one of the special abilities, roll 1d6. You should always roll whether the item is actually there or not. You merely reply, you don't find anything. The players realize that there is nothing there to find. But if you roll and possibly say the same thing, players realize that the items might be there still undiscovered. And that's correct. That if you don't roll when asked to do a check like this, you've given a definite negative. You don't want to give a definite negative. This roll should be for you, first off. Not out in front of the players. Down here we have a table. Demi-human special ability chances. Dwarf, find new construction, slope, shifting wall, or stone trap is on a d6, 1 to 2. Right? That's a 3. That's a failure. That's a 5. That's a failure. That's a 3 again. And that's a 2. Success. Right? You don't roll. They know for a fact that there was nothing to find. Elf, find secret doors on a d6, 1 to 2. Halfling, hide indoors on a d6, 1 to 2. Hide outdoors on a d10, 1 to 9. Yeah, hard to find those little halfling buggers outside. 1 to 9, that's a 9. Excuse me. Sorry. So, moving forward. Dwarves. Because of their mining experience, dwarves can sometimes recognize special dungeon features made of stone or wood, such as sloping passages, shifting walls, new constructions, traps. The traps a dwarf can find are those involving large dungeon features, such as falling ceiling, floor pit, so forth. Collapsing stairs, I would say, The traps a dwarf may discover does not refer to all traps. For example, a dwarf would have no chance of detecting a small dark trap on a chest. This would be detectable only by a thief. Roll 1d6. If the result of the roll is 1 or 2, the attempt is successful. If there is anything there to find. The attempt takes about 1 turn per area, up to about 30 feet by 30 foot in area. About the size of a room, or, not a giant room, but a room. Or the DM's choice. You may wish to change this to less or more time if the player says, I'll check for all of those dwarven things. Remind the player that it will take 4 turns, 1 for each of the 4 abilities, and ask the party if they want to do anything while the dwarf is searching. You may change this to 1 turn for all 4 abilities in a smaller area or a single room. So, if you're in like a little closet, right? You're searching for all the new things. Okay, probably takes less time than if you were in that, a nice 50 foot by 50 foot room, right? Elves. An elf character has a special skill at finding secret and hidden doors. This is because elves have very keen sight. They have become more skilled at finding hidden things than are other characters. The search for a secret door takes about 1 turn for each 10-foot long section of wall or floor or ceiling being searched. An elf discovers a secret door on a roll of 1 or 2 on a 1d6. If the player says, I'll search the room for secret doors, figure out the total amount of time needed to search all the room and tell the player. The rest of the party may wish to do other things while the elf is searching. So, yeah, it's a 10 by 10 section of wall. If it's a 50 by 50 room, you have 5 10-foot sections on each wall. Possibly you can cut that down for a corridor leading out of the room, right? Obviously, it's probably not a secret door behind an actual door. For example, you entered the room somehow, so you can take that off. But if the room, let's say there's 100 square feet of room to search, that's 10 turns. What are you going to do for the length of a movie while the elf is searching for secret doors in the room? That's what we mean by, what is the rest of the party doing? Halflings. A halfling character has special skills at hiding. This is because of the halfling's small size and ability to freeze or hold very still, not moving, for short periods of time. A halfling is also hard to hit when attacked by any creature larger than man-sized. Hiding. If a player says, my halfling will hide, you should roll to see the attempt is successful. If outdoors, roll 1d10. If the result is 1 to 9, the attempt is successful. Only a roll of 0 on the d10 will indicate failure to freeze properly. The attempt at hiding assumes that the character has crawled into the nearby underbrush and is not merely standing somewhere your halfling is not a possum playing dead. Okay, it's not just fallen over and going. It has concealed itself somehow. In a dungeon, a halfling may attempt to hide if some cover or shadow is nearby. Cover could be furniture, like a table or barrel or something, a nearby corner or a large niche, or even another character if the other character cooperates and does not move. If a halfling tries to hide within a dungeon, roll 1d6. The attempt is successful if the result is 1 or 2. If you got like a big old fighter, he's got a shield, maybe it's set down on the ground in front of him. The halfling could hide behind this guy. Yeah, that's conceivable. Why? There may be reasons. Maybe you're having a conversation of some type. You're going to have parlay, right? And the fighter is just standing in the background while some other else is out there talking, and the halfling is just being secret. Not necessarily a terrible idea, but as you can see, kind of you find a way to use it kind of scenario, right? A halfling trying to hide will always believe that he has succeeded, but only the DM knows for sure. Failure to hide might be revealed when a monster suddenly attacks. If a monster sees a halfling and approaches the character, you may say, it seems to be coming right at you, or something similar. Dodging. In combat against creatures larger than man size, halflings gain a bonus to their armor class. Due to their small size and skill at dodging, remember to penalize all attacks from creatures larger than man size by -1. You may wish to ask the player to remind you each time. So, that's a combat adjustment. And so, like, you remember, if I needed, like, say, 12 to hit the character with my hit roll, I will instead need 13. Or I take 1 point off the die roll I'm actually rolling. Whichever way, but don't do both, right? That's a 7. Obviously, at no point in doing the calculation if we've already established the targets as I've described. 15. So that's either a hit because, 12 became 13 and I rolled 15, or it's a hit because 15 became 14 and I was trying to beat a 12. Whichever way you want to handle it is fine, but be consistent. Right, that's going to be it for this session. I'm going to stop here before we move into dice. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found this at least tolerable to listen to. Me and my ramblings, which will probably necessitate several sessions just to get through this part, because it does go on a bit. But you know what? I appreciate you spending the time with me here. I'm going to continue playing through this because I want to be complete, but we'll get to some monster stuff eventually. I believe but genuinely, I think that there's a lot of useful information hidden in here and discussed, and we will have more of it. And, I think if you're not familiar with this material, it's worthwhile to be familiar with this material. That's enough for me today. I hope you all have a great day. And thank you very much for joining me. Goodbye.